Thus far, we've been focusing on mathematical probability distributions, but there's another area of probability that we should discuss: subjective probability distributions. A subjective probability distribution involves probabilities assigned based on experience or judgment or expertise. We're going to make an offer on the house. Will it be accepted? There's no mathematical way to answer that question, but we can operate on a gut feeling about how likely it is to occur. Of course, if that gut feeling is informed by experience, expertise in the field, then our gut level assumption is going to be more accurate. We will use subjective probability distributions when we cannot assume that all probabilities are equally likely, or in the very common case where we really have no data. Our decisions are simply going to have to be based on the preponderance of evidence. We can use subjective probability and combine it with either classical or relative frequency if possible to improve our decision making. We know that events can change probabilities of other events occurring, and with subjective probabilities, that is also true. But the things that can influence or distort our probabilistic reasoning are usually things between our own ears. Let me show you some of the cognitive biases that can affect our subjective reasoning. Which do you think is more dangerous? Nuclear power or coal? Most people wrestling with that question have no idea the actual numbers of deaths caused by either, or the amount of risk associated with either one. And so we sort of go to our gut. Which one sounds more dangerous? Obviously, nuclear. We have easy availability to nuclear accidents which have occurred throughout the world. 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, Fukushima. All of these spring immediately to mind. However, those cognitive associations can interfere with our decision making. Let's look at the actual numbers. Because air pollution is invisible, it's easy to ignore the number of deaths caused by air pollution related to coal. And yet the annual number of deaths associated with air pollution is around 10.2 million. Twice as many as deaths from COVID-19 at the time of this recording. But the number of annual deaths related to nuclear energy is 12,000. The number practically disappears in comparison. However, nuclear immediately pops to mind, whereas the invisible pollution caused by coal does not. And this is called an availability heuristic. An availability heuristic is estimating probability based on how readily images come to mind. If you go swimming, how likely are you to die from being eaten by a shark? In fact, you are statistically more likely to die in traffic, such as driving to the beach, as you are being eaten by a shark. What is the most dangerous animal? What animal kills the most number of human beings? Now, here in Missouri, we don't have a lot of great beaches, but we do have a lot of deer. Every year, 85 people, on average, die from collisions with animals. 10 are killed by sharks. So it would seem that deer are 8 times more dangerous, or 8 times more likely to cause a death, than are sharks. It's just that deer don't seem scary. Another miscalibration that can affect our probabilistic reasoning is overconfidence bias, which occurs when a person's subjective confidence in his or her judgments is greater than the objective accuracy of those judgments. And this is especially true when confidence about the rightness of those judgments is high. And there are 3 miscalibrations of subjective probability that will change the way that we think for the worse. Number 1 would be overestimation of actual performance, of thinking that we are better at something, decision making, leadership, than we actually are. A second would be overplacement of our performance relative to others, thinking we are so much better than others at the same task. And the third would be overconfidence in the accuracy of our beliefs, the idea that I could not ever get it wrong. And if it looks like I'm wrong, then you must be the one who's wrong because I know that I could never make a mistake like that. Some biases correlate with IQ and others do not. And these can be very insidious because regardless of how smart you are or think you are, these biases can come back to bite you. Confirmation bias is seeking information that supports belief. In other words, believing people who you agree with. Reasoning to what we want to be true, not to what the evidence supports. Now, the effects of bias can be moderated when people think carefully about subjective judgments and are aware of their own cognitive biases. And this is why it is so important to know the kinds of cognitive biases that can affect our decision making and take steps to make sure that we're not led astray by ourselves. Because the easiest person for you to fool is you.